October 28, 2012, 38-year-old Kim Dorsey was found dead in her bedroom by her firefighter husband, Derek Dorsey, who had just returned home from a 24-hour shift. When Drake arrived at his home in East Jacksonville, Florida, he went to the bedroom and was shocked to find the place in disarray. The walls were riddled with bullet holes, and the room was covered in blood. In the middle of this tragic scene was the body of Kim, a 38-year-old workwoman, lying naked on the floor, not breathing and bleeding. Next to her, Derek found a broken knife and a firearm. Trying to muster what little courage he had left to act during this challenging situation, Derek tried to save his wife by frantically performing CPR on her and quickly calling 911 to report the tragic incident.
Kim! Oh, you got him now.
Kim! What's going?
Please send an ambulance back. Send Rescue 50, I'm off-duty fireman. Come on.
We are sending rescue. You have to tell me exactly what she did. What happened?
I don't know. She either cut herself or something. I can't see. I'm trying to figure this out.
Are you with her right now?
Yes, I am.
Is she awake?
No, she's not.
So you think she's beyond any resuscitation?
Yeah, send rescue anyway.
Yes, rescue's on the way, okay?
Investigators arrived. One of them noticed a dog statue outside the front door that was on its side. It looked out of place. They noticed a mess. You could tell something horrible had happened here. They found the 38-year-old wife and businesswoman had gotten into a violent fight with the perpetrator before he could take her life. She had been severely beaten and stabbed to death. T.K. Waters, who was a sergeant with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Homicide Division, and Detective Larry Kuchkowski said that a broken pool cue, knife and gun were found near Kim's body. The wall was riddled with holes and blood spatter was widespread. The victim's body was covered in cuts and scrapes, especially in the head area. It was clear that the perpetrator had used the pool cue, which was found on the side of the body, to hit Kim in the head multiple times. There were also visible holes in the wall of the room, indicating that the fight between the two parties had reached the point of one of them using a firearm. After carefully examining the bedroom, investigators transferred the victim's body to the forensic medicine department and continued to investigate the rest of the house's furniture. They soon found the victim's cell phone and several remote controls. They were all found in one of the bathrooms in the house. This indicates that the victim tried to wipe his fingerprints off of them. Cigarette butts and some other evidence were found and sent with other evidence to the forensic lab for DNA testing. Investigators wanted to interview eyewitnesses or some friends of the couple, including the victim's husband, Derek Dorsey, the man whom investigators suspected after he covered his wife with a blanket and thus tampered with the evidence, who told them that the last time he saw his wife was on the morning of Saturday, October 27, 2012. That morning, Derek woke up early and dressed for work. Kim was lying on the bed, in a deep sleep. On that day, the city was completely busy with football games between the universities of Florida and Georgia. Derek was part of the emergency teams responsible for covering the game in the event of any accident or disaster. After about 24 hours of continuous and exhausting work, Derek returned to his home in the upscale neighborhood of East Jacksonville, Florida, at 8 a.m. on Sunday, October 28th, to find his wife's body in the bedroom. Kim was completely naked and not breathing, and there were visible wounds on her body. Derek tried hard to revive his wife, following the first aid procedures he had been trained in, but he quickly realized that her body was probably dry, indicating that she had been dead for hours. At this point, Derek covered his wife's naked body with a blanket and called emergency services to report the tragic event. Investigators asked Derek directly, what if he suspected a specific person who might have been behind what happened to his wife? His answer was strange. Derek told them that he believed his wife took her own life, given her poor mental state. This conclusion seemed weird to many investigators, as the crime scene was a violent fight between two people, which ultimately led to the victim's brutal murder. It was strange to see Derek, an experienced man, say such a thing. Because of this, investigators began to suspect that Derek might be behind the heinous crime that claimed the life of his wife. Investigators also noticed no signs of forced entry into the house. It was striking that the money and valuables remained untouched, indicating that the killer was someone who could freely enter the house and was not a stranger or intruder, which increased their suspicions about Derek, the victim's husband. In addition, covering Kim's body with a blanket could have destroyed many of the nuclear evidence and fingerprints. Derek caught their attention again when he confessed to having an affair with another woman. This could have been a reason for killing his wife. But Derek also had an alibi. As he told investigators, he had spent 24 hours at work. Investigators obtained Derek's phone records to confirm his whereabouts account. His name was on official records, as well as the fact that several of his colleagues testified that they were with him during this period. However, investigators believed that Drake might have been able to escape from his duty without anyone noticing. Then he easily returned to his colleagues. To prove their point, investigators filed a lawsuit to search through Fire Officer Drake's cell phone data. This data proved Drake's story correct, eventually removing him from the list of suspects. When investigators canvassed the area around the house to interview some neighbors to see if anyone had noticed anything unusual around Kim's home at the time of the crime, one neighbor told them that he had seen a small sports car near the Dorsey's home on Saturday morning. At the time, the crime scene lab had released a statement explaining what happened to Kim the morning of the crime, which stated that Kim died on Saturday morning, October 27th, shortly after Derek left, because her cell phone was thrown into a sink and stopped working after that. The crime lab report stated that Kim had received multiple direct blows to the head with a pool cue, in addition to at least one blow to the neck with a knife, which resulted in her immediate death. The most essential thing in the report was that the victim had been assaulted before she lost her life, which is why there were no clothes on the body. The blood spatter patterns indicated that Kim had likely been bludgeoned in the nose and had fought desperately for her life. According to the crime lab, Kim appeared to have been tied by the wrists to a dresser with plastic ties. Evidence showed that Kim had managed to pull a gun from a drawer behind her and shot her attacker 5 times before she was killed. At this point, Derek was allowed to return home. Several days later, Drake contacted investigators to say he had found a pornographic DVD in the player. It was not his. This made him suspicious that a home entertainment system employee named JR had been home doing repairs the day before Kim was killed. Investigators zeroed in on JR. Their radar went off when they noticed that JR was working with plastic ties, but investigators eventually crossed him off their list too, because he was working far away on Saturday morning. After Drake was removed from the suspect list, investigators turned to Lance Kirkpatrick, but Derek ruled out that his friend had attempted to kill his wife. He said Kirkpatrick was in Georgia at the time. Drake pointed to another person, Joshua, 21, who had worked at the house for long periods and was staying there. Investigators investigated Joshua, but he was removed from the suspect list, bringing investigators back to square one. While working on the case, investigators learned that Kirkpatrick was connected to a stolen vehicle report filed on October 30. That helped us piece together the puzzle, the investigator said. Kirkpatrick was not in Georgia at the time of Kim's murder, as Derek believed. This discovery led investigators to suspect Kirkpatrick entirely. According to a traffic control report, Kirkpatrick got into an SUV during the early morning hours of October 27, the day the murder occurred. The characteristics of the car were broadly consistent with what neighbors had described. That night, Kirkpatrick was attending a house party with several friends. He appeared to be intoxicated when he left. This led him to steal a friend's car without permission. When Kirkpatrick or the vehicle did not show up until October 30th, his friend formally reported the car being stolen. Investigators chose to talk to one of Kirkpatrick's friends who had been at the house party that night. They chose a man named Brian. He ran a construction company. The main reason Brian was chosen was because he had a criminal past. This made it easier for investigators to pressure him. He was questioned about Kirkpatrick. Kiefer told police Brian explained to investigators that Kirkpatrick had confessed to the crime. "He told me he killed someone." He said Kirkpatrick had gone into his boss's house and had been confronted by the man's wife. The encounter turned violent, and he had no intention of hurting Kim. But things got out of hand when Kim suddenly appeared in his path. This led to a violent confrontation between the two, which tragically ended in Kim's death. Kiefer added that Kirkpatrick told him about the cue stick and Kim's attempt to defend herself by shooting him 5 times. According to investigators, Kiefer mentioned things that only someone at the crime scene would know. Kirkpatrick was eventually arrested. At first, Kirkpatrick admitted that he drove to Kim's house early on October 27th. But he hesitated to enter and left the scene immediately. Of course, investigators did not believe this story. They continued to pressure Kirkpatrick to answer, but he continued to deny it. Investigators tried to delay Kirkpatrick's trial as much as possible. He hopes to find physical evidence that directly links him to the crime. But in the end, they took a step in the trial based on the testimony of his friend Brian, which was enough to shake Kirkpatrick's position. Kirkpatrick eventually decided to admit responsibility for Kim's death, but insisted that it was just an accident. Kirkpatrick's defense was that he went to Dorsey's house to get a football jersey and ended up protecting himself from Kim. Kirkpatrick said that the pornographic DVD was his. He then claimed that he and Kim had sex in her bedroom. He said that after that, Kim's mood changed, and the violent, fatal attack on him ensued. Kirkpatrick's friend Brian testified in court that Kirkpatrick told him that he entered the house through the key that was under a statue of a dog outside and violently confronted Kim when she picked up her phone to call for help. He grabbed a pool cue and hit her several times and smashed the cue on her head, Kiefer told the court. After Kim shot him, Kirkpatrick responded brutally. "I stabbed her in the neck," he said, according to Kiefer. A jury found Kirkpatrick guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without parole.